On the 20th of August, 2011, the man who invented the web browser said software is eating the world. Um, in 2025, AI is demonstrating that that statement, or perhaps that prophecy, as it were, is now a lived experience. The acceleration is extremely exponential. And I want to explore, and I think the critical question to me is who is going to own these robots? Who is going to own the machines? And how likely is that going to unfold? Welcome to the channel. My name is Ted Coker. This is Win is Win. I want to preface the conversation by saying we're going to talk about two things in order to understand how AI is going to be owned, who is going to own AI. And the first thing is we're going to look at the value chain. The value chain is essentially, I'm going to look at 5 buckets of what the AI value chain looks like. And then number 2, and I think more importantly, is to look at the economic opportunity. And I think the AI money game, when I say economic opportunity, I'm just talking about money. I'm talking about, the fact that I believe the AI money games are going to be played on three levels. So that's what we're going to take a look at. So let's start with the value chain. In order for you to understand the value chain, you sort of have to understand how AI is created, how it's controlled, and how it's monetized. Okay, the value chain has 5 buckets. The first bucket is data collection and ownership. So a long time ago, we had. I say this a long time ago because big data was actually a thing, but it was really strategic for those who understood where big data was going. You cannot be a major player in AI if you do not have big data. Where does this data come from? It comes from user bases, or it comes from publicly available data. The second thing is that most of this data is proprietary, i.e., it's private and it belongs to a single company. And the examples of these companies would be, and I think all of us are on these platforms, whether you want to believe it or not, you are on there, and they know more about us than we think they do. So Meta, Alphabet or Google, Amazon, ByteDance, i.e. TikTok, and you name them. All of these organizations have significant amounts of data. That's the first bucket in the value chain. The second is infrastructure. So the data infrastructure and the ability to process this data. And this is the role of cloud computing. Globally, there are 3 major players. You have AWS, so Amazon Web Services. You have Azure, which is Microsoft Azure, and then you have Google Cloud. Those are the 3 biggest players. The other thing that's really critical about this part is the processing. In a gold rush, the people, the person that gets the wealthiest is the one who sells the tools, or what we call the picks and shovels. And in this gold rush, the people, the companies selling the GPUs are amongst, if not the top winners at the moment. And that talks to NVIDIA's of this world. I don't think Intel is featured in the way that it should have. I think it's probably lagging in that race. And immediately, these chips and these tools create a barrier to entry, right? So the second bucket is infrastructure and the processing of AI. The third bucket is the ability to develop these models and to train them. You need data scientists, you need research labs, and that manifests itself through the likes of, OpenAI, DeepMind, other university labs, and just general AI labs that start up that fundamentally require access to these things. The additional thing to that is you need key APIs and you need really important algorithms and the intellectual property that comes within this in this bucket. So bucket number 3 is model development and training. A lot of them are proprietary. A few players are going for open source, and there's going to be that race against the two. The big entities like your Google, your open AIs are all looking at proprietary information, including Grok, and Meta is going for a more open source. And then you look at a big platform like Hugging Face, that is essentially the open source marketplace for large language models. So that's number three. Number four, you have to look at model deployment and integration. Once you've built these models, you have to integrate them into real world applications. So apps, websites, robots, etc., etc. And these become either an API or a SaaS solution, software as a service, as it were. And these sort of allow smaller businesses or startups to rent the AI capabilities that these big guys have developed. It's important, if you're playing in this part of the value chain, to create interfaces that your consumer or your business client can access, and thereby create value for their downstream customers. Okay, so I think that's the fourth bucket. And the last bucket in this is the end user ecosystem. These are the consumer facing chatbots, the recommendation engines, the self-driving cars, and this is where a lot of the enterprise solutions sit. And then you have the monetization models, very critical. I mean, this is almost the last thread as you look at the fifth bucket within the AI value chain. You have to be able to monetize. You monetize through subscriptions, usage fees. There's a price per prompt, or there's a price, per use of the API, data sharing, etc., etc. Right? So that makes the five buckets for the AI value chain. Number one, data collection and ownership. Number two, data infrastructure and processing. Number three is the model development and training. Number four is the model deployment and integration. And then number five is the end user ecosystem. The the next thing you sort of take a look at to understand who is going to own these robots is you look at the economic opportunity. I said earlier that I believe the AI games are going to play themselves across three different levels. When you look at the top 10 most valuable organizations, um, each of them are now worth $1 trillion or above $1 trillion. The first level, I believe, the sort of AI money games are going to be played at is the $1 trillion level. The second is the $1 billion level, and the third is the $1 million level. These are already numbers that are mind-boggling. All right. So let's quickly start by looking at the top 10 organizations. Who plays here? And just to give you some context around what I want to do in this segment is, when you look at the economic opportunity on each level, I'll look at who plays there. I'll also look at what is their value proposition, i.e., what are they offering the market? And then number three, what the implications are. Okay. So the most valuable company at the moment is Apple at 3.6 trillion, Nvidia 3.5, Microsoft 3.1, Alphabet 2.3 trillion, Amazon 2.3 trillion, Meta 1.5 trillion, Tesla 1.3 trillion, Broadcom 1.3 trillion, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing 1.1 trillion. The one thing to underscore about all these organizations, it goes back to the point Mark Andreessen made, is that software is eating the world. At least 90% of these companies are software first organizations. That is a critical thing to understand. 90% of these organizations are software first organizations. You compile that top 10, all of those companies are worth about $16.9 trillion. Those numbers are incredibly staggering. And this is the first group we're going to take a look at. So the $1 trillion sort of AI games are going to be played by these guys. Their value proposition is infrastructure development. I think you're going to see these guys building the infrastructure that supports the next level of AI, be it power plants, data centers with different GPUs to the ones we have now, And just to give you a sense of what it costs, I don't think I have the technical expertise to break down what a data center would cost, but I look forward to reading and then bringing that to the fore. But the average sort of what they call a H100 chip from NVIDIA will set you back anything from about 25,000 to $40,000 per chip. And if you're building a data center, you can already imagine the astronomical numbers that are required for you to build a data center that's going to support AI infrastructure. All right. So the likes of OpenAI do a deal with Microsoft. Alphabet has a dominance in AI research, and so they can build these type of infrastructures to support the value chain, but also to play at that level where very few can. The cloud uh, players, your Amazons, your Google, your Microsoft, will continue to dominate in that space as the demand driven by AI continues to grow. The implications playing at this level is that there's going to be an ownership concentration. You can already see how that's going to unfold. Very few organizations or very few companies can actually play at this level. So the ownership concentration would widen the economic gaps. And then I think there's also going to be some regulatory and ethical concerns, the privacy and also just the monopoly power that these guys are going to have. So at $1 trillion dollar level, that's how the game is being played. And that is who is going to own the most, what I think is the most valuable part of the AI value chain. Those are those organizations. The second level is the $1 billion game. Who plays here? You sort of have these mid to large organizations that are very well capitalized. They have a lot of capital, either through private equity or venture capital. They've done huge deals with someone in the $1 trillion sort of bracket, and they can execute on that. The value that they bring, or their value proposition, is that they bring specialized AI solutions to specific sectors in their business. So what comes to mind is self-driving technology, robots, biotech, manufacturing, and they essentially take on a focused niche in order to have either regional or industry dominance and play within their space of expertise. I think that's how the $1 billion games are going to be played. Very focused, very concentrated. And the implications are that the opportunity for high returns would be significantly higher if organizations are focused on a niche, particularly niches that provide significant economic return or just are very profitable. The other implication is that, like I said earlier, they often rely on these $1 trillion players for cloud services or advanced computing. The third level, where this is going to be played, is the $1 million level. Who plays here? I think this is the opportunity for many startups. This is the opportunity for many individual contributors, for private businesses, for you and I to get a piece of the pie, as it were. So small and medium-sized businesses, bootstrapped entrepreneurs, niche startups, solo consultants, and then just individuals leveraging existing AI platforms to build products. What is the value proposition here? It is just this creative and localized solutions that these guys bring to the market. So you're building custom chatbots, AI-driven e-commerce tools, industry-specific analytics. You are fast, you're agile, and you can pivot quickly to focus on other segments of the game. Examples here for me would be a marketing agencies that uses GPT to create models. You start offering things like copywriting services. You start offering analytics services, creating campaigns for clients, creating content, etc. The other, I think, sector that's going to benefit quite greatly from this is education. Education platforms that are going to offer AI tutors are going to be amazing, as well as stuff like AI language translation or real-time translation. I also think there's going to be an opportunity for the sort of software hardware integration from from this segment, and then robotics. I think there's going to be high-level robotics that play at a very sophisticated level, and then I think there's going to be a sort of medium to lower level integration where startups, individuals can compete on creating cheaper access to some robotic functions, et cetera, et cetera. You're also going to see stuff like agricultural automation in specific regions, and just creating formulas, creating models. I think that it's going to be critical to see how AI helps us create high functioning municipalities. All of that is a sort of SaaS service, so the software as a service game. And then the implications here is that there's a lower barrier to entry, which I think is great. It allows for a lot of competition. There will be a dependence on your sort of billion-dollar player, to whom you are getting your API from. You're using their intellectual property, so there's a little bit of a risk there. And you're creating these cloud-based tools that can serve sort of a one-to-many. And I think that's really critical. And I think there's significant potential for some million-dollar players here that can scale into a billion-dollar range if you're successful. And so I think it's easier for you to go from the million-dollar level into a billion-dollar level than it is from you to go from $1 billion to $1 trillion sort of organization. And I think that's the way I think the ownership games are going to happen. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this. Go into the comments. Let me know how you think this is going to play out. And this has been another episode of Winners Win. Thank you.